Imagine you're searching for a lost diamond on the beach. Every now and then you think you see something glinting among the dim sea of sand, but it's just a shard of glass. Once more, disappointment overwhelms you. Why do you think we're painting such strange pictures in your mind's eye? That's exactly how you can describe the feelings of astronomers who are unsuccessfully trying to detect extraterrestrial signals. For years, scientists have been intensely peering into the darkness through telescope eyepieces, but the meteor-streaked cosmos stubbornly remains silent, hiding its grim secrets. However, sometimes the silence is broken by rare signals of unknown origin. It is important to understand that there are many objects in the universe capable of revealing themselves in one way or another, through blinding light, energetic pulsations, or radio bursts. And it is the latter that we are going to talk about now. What are these phenomena, and what sensation has recently shaken the scientific world? This fall, astronomers were baffled by unprecedented cosmic activity. In just a month and a half, more than 1,600 radio signals reached Earth, whereas previously, such messages were counted in the dozens at best. At times, the instruments recorded up to 1,500 signals in just 1 hour. This shocked scientists, especially since fast radio bursts are considered the most inexplicable phenomenon in the universe. What are single radio pulses and where do they come from? Fast radio bursts have only been known since their discovery in 2007. Like many phenomena in astronomy, the discovery was made by accident while analyzing data related to observations of pulsars. The duration of the signal was only a few milliseconds, but the energy of the event that produced it is beyond description. It is equivalent to the amount of energy emitted by our star over several days. And all of this happened in a fraction of a second. Honestly, it's hard to believe. And yet the fact remains, the radio signal was detected, so astronomers began to study it. It took the group of scientists a whole 5 years to verify whether the fast radio burst 010724 burst really came from deep space and wasn't caused, for example, by an ordinary electrical appliance. So, a detailed analysis showed that the radio burst lasting less than 5 milliseconds came from the depths of a dwarf galaxy, the small Magellanic Cloud. And the distance to the object that produced this signal was incredible. About 3 billion light years, or 1 gigaparsec. Since no other signals were received, the group of scientists from the State Association of Scientific and Applied Research concluded that such phenomena are very rare in the universe. How wrong they were. Let's step back and note the clear discrepancy between the signal's duration and the energy that created it. Doctor of Physical and Mathematical Sciences, professor of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Sergei Popov openly mocks this paradox in his lectures, claiming that such radio signals cannot possibly be the result of extraterrestrial life. You have to admit, it's completely illogical to spend such a huge amount of energy just to send a single signal. Then the next question is, what exactly is capable of generating such powerful radio bursts? To answer that, it's worth recalling the words of Sergei Popov, who reminds us that we've already encountered a similar phenomenon while studying gamma ray bursts. Back in Soviet times, it was believed that this type of radiation was caused exclusively by atomic bomb explosions, so spy satellites were regularly launched to detect such bursts, to warn the governments involved in the Cold War about potential dangers. Coincidence once again played a major role. Thanks to active monitoring of outer space, it was discovered that the sources of gamma ray bursts could be objects millions of times more powerful than any atomic bomb. And these monsters are infinitely far from our planet. The final realization came only after 30 years of meticulous observations. Initially, Astronomers were baffled by the dozens of powerful signals. Were there sources inside the solar system or far beyond our galaxy? Of course, because of this, there were people who speculated about messages from alien civilizations. Movies released in the 90s, such as Contact, also contributed to this kind of sentiment. Jodie Foster's character caught a signal in exactly this way, indicating intelligent life in the universe. But in that case, it was a radio burst, not a gamma burst. It was almost like they predicted the future. Anyway, we've gotten sidetracked. As for gamma bursts, scientists later figured out what phenomenon manifested itself in that way. It turned out to be a supernova explosion. But with radio bursts, things aren't so clear-cut. If you look closely at the graph showing the first radio signal of unknown origin, you can conclude that its source is very far from Earth. And the energy that caused this burst is equal to 10 billion times the luminosity of the sun in just 1 millisecond. What's even more interesting is how such power could fit into the radio frequency range. Gamma ray bursts are easier to explain, as they also happen on Earth during nuclear bomb detonations. They rarely appear in the radio frequency range. This still hasn't helped us solve the mystery of these bursts. Let me repeat, if this is an alien civilization, then it's an extremely wasteful one. To waste so much energy literally throwing it to the wind. As with any important matter, there were small obstacles in solving this star-marked crossword puzzle that puzzled the scientists. What funny incident interfered with the astronomical investigation this time? The fact is that at the Parkes Observatory in Australia, located in New South Wales, some inexplicable things were once discovered. The instruments began to detect similar radio signals, and with strange regularity. They were blamed on everything from passing airliners to electrical discharges. But the answer turned out to be obvious. It was just an ordinary microwave oven used by the observatory staff. Hungry scientists would open the microwave door before it finished working, so radio waves would escape and the equipment would pick them up. When everything became clear, the astronomers began to check the very first signal, fast radio burst 0107-24, also known as the Lorimer burst. But according to a detailed analysis, it turned out to be genuine and not related to terrestrial radio equipment. So is the Lorimer burst still the only one that has been detected so far? Of course not. In 2013, after a series of false reports, the sensors once again delighted astrophysicists by detecting several more millisecond signals, after which a conclusion was drawn. There are actually a lot of such bursts in the universe, possibly several thousand events per day. But the question remained, what is generating these signals? Until recently, scientists could only determine the location from which some of the bursts originate. In 2019, a single pulse with the code number 18,09424 was detected. It turned out that it came from a distant galaxy in the constellation Grus, which is located 4 billion light years away from the Sun. But in 2020, for the first time, a source was discovered that generated a monstrous burst. It was a neutron star with an incredibly strong magnetic field located in the constellation Vulpecula of the Milky Way galaxy. At the moment, scientists have nothing to please the public with. They still don't know for sure what causes these titanic radio bursts. Moreover, there is no single scientific hypothesis, but there are several interesting assumptions. First of all, it's worth mentioning the hypothesis of Avi Loeb, a professor at the Center for Astrophysics. Scientists believe that radio bursts may be the result of the activity of certain stars in our galaxy. An alternative opinion is that extragalactic sources are to blame, for example, some exotic events like the collision of neutron stars, the transformation of a supermassive pulsar into a black hole, or the result of magnetar activity. As you can see, nothing mentions extraterrestrial civilizations. But don't think scientists haven't accomplished anything during this time. Now we have the ability to detect signals from the same source as well as to catch radio bursts more frequently. Very soon things will start moving more dynamically. The Chinese 500-meter Aperture Spherical Telescope will help with this, as well as the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment Radio Telescope, located in British Columbia, one of the provinces of Canada. The latter is capable of efficiently scanning the sky, detecting new radio bursts. As for the spherical telescope located in China's Guizhou province, it will serve not only as a signal catcher, but will also allow the study of the evolution of dark matter and distant galaxies, as well as solve other scientific problems. By the way, just a few years ago, anyone could take part in the search for radio signals. What was needed for that? You just had to join the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence project, which allowed you to catch radio bursts without leaving your home. This nonprofit platform operated on the Berkeley Open Infrastructure for Network Computing program, using the computing power of home computers. Unfortunately, the project is currently frozen. Since April 2020, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Home has stopped sending tasks to its users. But there are several alternative options for searching for gravitational waves, as well as creating a three-dimensional model of stellar streams. Finally, it is worth noting that the hypotheses put forward by some scientists are questioned by other astronomers. For example, there are about 36 magnetars in our galaxy, but for some reason, instruments have not yet detected anything resembling fast radio bursts coming from these sources. There's something to think about, isn't there? Nowadays, it's hard to find a celestial body that excites the minds of scientists and space enthusiasts as much as the dusty, little-studied Mars. You probably already know the reasons, especially when the well-known Elon Musk announced his desire to colonize the red planet. It became a truly viral topic that left a noticeable mark on the development of pop culture and flooded the news feeds. There's another reason why Mars sparks genuine public interest. It's located close to Earth, and the processes taking place on other celestial bodies can have an impact on our planet. The European, Japanese, and Russian space agencies have built a huge number of spacecraft to thoroughly study Mars. At the beginning of the century, National Aeronautics and Space Administration launched 10 probes for this purpose, and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, has been carrying out its mission for 16 years now. And during this time, it has managed to make some interesting discoveries. Make yourself comfortable. We're going to tell you the most amazing facts about Mars. The Martian orbital spacecraft became the 27th probe sent to the Red Planet. Although this is a National Aeronautics and Space Administration project, scientists from other space agencies can freely use the information obtained by this spacecraft. The probe was launched using an Atlas launch vehicle from Cape Canaveral, Florida. On August 12, 2005, the most favorable time was chosen, since at that moment Mars was close enough to our planet. The object arrived on March 10, 2006, that is 6 months later. From that moment on, the mission of the Martian orbital spacecraft has never been interrupted. To communicate with Earth, the probe used a directional antenna with a diameter of about 3 meters. The data received is transmitted at a speed of 6 megabits per second. The main work of the Martian orbiter was completed by 2010, but even now, researchers continue to monitor the probe since it can still be useful by providing important information. The spacecraft has 2 durable solar sails, each of which is about 4 to 5 meters long. The Martian spacecraft isn't the only one orbiting the Red Planet. In this area, the Mars Global Surveyor, Mars Express, and Mars Odyssey probes also operated. Later, the Phoenix, Curiosity, and InSight spacecraft joined them. The mentioned probes are rovers designed to explore the surface of the Red Planet. Such activity led to an absolute record. Mars is the only object in the solar system that is being studied by such a number and quality of devices at the same time. But let's get back to the Martian orbital spacecraft. National Aeronautics and Space Administration has set the following goals for its mission: searching for fossils, traces of water and ice, as well as mapping the planet. Astronomers are still troubled by the question of whether life ever existed on the Red Planet, and whether it could arise there in the future. Humanity had been considering creating devices to explore Mars long before Elon Musk spoke about his intentions. For example, National Aeronautics and Space Administration had announced plans for missions to the Red Planet back in the 1990s, but there wasn't enough data to make them a reality. Do you know what concerns engineers and astronomers the most? Of course, a manned mission to Mars, a shuttle carrying people and several tons of cargo, will take much longer to reach Mars than a small orbital probe. And once space travelers and settlers arrive at their destination, they will be left to fend for themselves. As we know, water has not yet been found on Mars, so people will have to survive in a rusty desert under extremely harsh conditions. These problems are hard to solve because transporting water from Earth is difficult and expensive. The only solution at the moment is to install recycling systems that allow water to be purified and reused. If, for some reason, the first settlers on Mars fail to implement this technology, they will die in record time. Again, about the legendary National Aeronautics and Space Administration probe. To find out what Mars is like, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter was equipped with a high-resolution camera, about 1 meter per pixel. This gadget is more advanced than its predecessors. Because the terrain of Mars is significantly different from Earth's, experts can't always clearly differentiate between icy cliffs, dusty crags, water ice, and other structures. But during the mission of the Martian orbiter, the situation improves somewhat. Now, scientists have unique technological ideas in their arsenal that contribute to new, amazing discoveries. One of the first tasks of the probe was to select a suitable landing site for the rover Curiosity. At that time, astronomers had 12 options for a safe landing of the spacecraft. Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter first examined the Neely Fossae Trough, taking several images of this object, which became evidence that there could have been water in this region at some point. For example, clay minerals and carbonates indicate a river landscape. But the main question for Mars researchers remains open. Are there water flows deep within the planet? It's no secret that Mars appears to us as a dusty, dry, desert-like place. However, scientists suggest that millions of years ago the red planet had water, an atmosphere, and maybe even living creatures. Thus, the theory that liquid could have settled in the deep layers of Mars seems quite plausible. There is another danger awaiting the first Martian colonist: planetary-scale storms. It was the extreme dryness and sandstorms that shaped the landscape of Mars. Sometimes catastrophic dust storms cover the entire surface of the red planet, and the wind speed of these dusty monsters averages 100 kilometers per hour. The sandstorms on Mars are so powerful that they can completely change the appearance of the planet in a short period of time. The orbital spacecraft was able to obtain clear evidence of this frightening phenomenon. In one of the images taken on May 28, 2018, Mars appears as it is usually seen by people on Earth. But just a month later, on July 1, the planet looks as if it has literally been swallowed by sand dunes. In February 2008, the probe captured more sensational images. At that time, scientists' attention was focused on the northern polar cap of the red planet. There was a theory that warm water might be hidden beneath the thick layer of ice. Suddenly, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter sensors detected strong ground movements in the area where a cliff over 700 meters high was located. It turned out that an avalanche had come down from its slopes. As a result, the rising cloud of dust reached up to 200 meters, and the soil at the site of the avalanche became loose and layered. What could be the possible causes of this event? In spring, carbon dioxide raises temperatures at the Martian poles, turning ice into vapor. That's what causes avalanches like this one to occur. Because of the carbon dioxide vapors, unique spider-like patterns are formed. The Martian orbiter recorded this strange phenomenon. The photos are dated February 4, 2009, As you can see, the craters and lines that appeared during the release of steam look like a colony of giant tarantulas. By the way, the process of sublimation, that is, the transition of ice into a gaseous state, contributes to the formation of most of the Martian landscape. And here, the probe's camera captured something terrifying. A long, narrow whirlwind rises above the surface of the planet. The photo was taken on February 16, 2019. The probe is about 300 kilometers away from the Martian tornado. After a detailed study, it became clear that the height of the whirlwind exceeded 800 meters, meaning its size is comparable to the tallest building in the world at the moment, Burj Khalifa in Dubai. What else was discovered on the red planet? In 2003, not everything was going smoothly for the European Space Agency. As part of the Mars Express and Beagle projects, an orbiter and a lander were sent to the red planet. The first spacecraft managed to reach Mars's orbit and begin its mission as planned, but the Beagle 2 lander failed as soon as it approached the planet's surface. The Martian orbiter discovered it 11 years after the crash landing. In the images obtained, it's clearly visible that the robot partially deployed its solar panels before a fatal technical failure occurred. Despite the setbacks, Mars exploration continues and brings its own results. In January 2018, with the help of the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter probe, scientists discovered giant ice veins on the planet's surface. Thus, water deposits were eventually found. Currently, there are about 8 such objects in various locations on the planet. In the future, this will greatly help travelers who venture to Mars at their own risk, as it will solve the water supply problem. After studying the composition and structure of the ice, the researchers were amazed. It turns out that the discovered water once fell to the surface as snow. This fact confirms the theory that in the past, Mars was a planet with seas, oceans, a temperate climate, and changing seasons, almost like Earth. But this recent grand discovery does not mean that there is nothing left to explore on Mars. 4 ground-based devices are currently studying every meter of the planet, while orbital spacecraft and probes continue searching for valuable artifacts. In February 2021, the Perseverance rover successfully landed on the red planet, and along with it arrived the first Martian helicopter. Researchers are planning to transport soil samples from Mars to Earth, marking an unprecedented event in space exploration history. The most interesting things are still ahead, and we will definitely keep you updated on the latest events. The year 2017. At an observatory located in Hawaii, an asteroid named Oumuamua was detected. It became the first interstellar object in history to be discovered in the solar system. Almost nothing is actually known about its characteristics and composition. Some scientists claim that this object can't even be considered a special asteroid. There is a theory that Oumuamua is actually an artificially created object which was made and sent to our planet to record everything that happens. Why don't we have a clear answer to this question? The thing is, researchers noticed Oumuamua when it was already 33 million kilometers away from Earth. That is, at the moment when the object had actually already left the solar system. It turns out we don't know what's happening in space, and whether someone could be watching us and recording everything that happens on our planet. Could there really be a hidden threat hanging over us? National Aeronautics and Space Administration continues to explore the most remote corners of space, and every year it makes new discoveries that are simply mind-blowing. Yes, many exoplanets aren't interesting at all. They're located in distant galaxies, and no living organisms inhabit them. However, among them, there are truly mind-blowing objects. That's what we're going to talk about now. We've prepared another list for you of the 6 strangest exoplanets. J1214b. We know that most of the Earth is covered by the world ocean. It seems like there is no object that surpasses our planet in the amount of water expanses, but that's not the case. Located 42 light years from the solar system is Gliese Yaris 1214b, an exoplanet that is believed to have oceans more than 1,500 kilometers deep. Earth, with its Mariana Trench reaching only about 11 kilometers, clearly pales in comparison to this object. The mass of all the water on Gliese Yaris 1214b makes up 75% of its total mass. Again, if we compare this to the same figure on our planet, it's only 0.05%. We don't know much about this exoplanet yet, but it's quite possible that in the future, scientists will discover many amazing creatures living in the depths of its oceans. GJ 1214b. Korod 7. It's no secret that snow is made of water, but Korod 7b proves otherwise. There, snow falls in the form of rocks. Why does this happen? Like many similar objects, this exoplanet is in a state of synchronous rotation relative to its main star. The side that faces this star heats up to more than 2,000 degrees. Meanwhile, the darkened surface has a temperature of only minus 210 degrees Celsius. As a result, the side facing the star gets so hot that the rocks on its surface simply evaporate. These processes form huge clouds of rock. They move to the other, colder side, where their temperature drops, and eventually the planet is battered by a rain of giant boulders. If a person could get there despite the terrible conditions, they wouldn't survive it. Optical Gravitational Lensing Experiment, 2016 BLG 1195 LB. This exoplanet is the only one known in the constellation Scorpius. Its main characteristics are similar to the planet Hoth from the Star Wars franchise. If you look closely, it looks a lot like Earth, and it's even at the same distance from its star as our planet is from the Sun. The main difference is that it is completely covered in ice. Also, the main star is presumably very small, especially compared to the Sun, so it's likely an ultraviolet, ultra-cool, or brown dwarf. Because of this, life is impossible there, even though there is a huge layer of ice. The exoplanet was discovered in 2017 by the Korean Institute of Astronomy and Space Sciences, using the gravitational microlensing method, which is a way to detect objects that do not emit any light at all. Further research may well add even more interesting facts to the data about optical gravitational lensing experiment. 2016 Bulge 1195 LB. A large number of interesting facts. In 2020, they published an image of a planet that is 4 times larger than Jupiter. BJ 504 BE is located in a relatively young system, about 160 million years old, while for comparison, the solar system is about 4 billion years old. BJ 504 BE. It can be seen in the constellation Virgo, but that's not a unique feature of the exoplanet. Take a look at the image, please. It turns out that this celestial object has a distinct pinkish hue. However, National Aeronautics and Space Administration clarified that when the photo was taken, they used infrared optics. This color in the image is due to the temperature of the exoplanet. It usually doesn't drop below 237 degrees Celsius. Optical Gravitational Lensing Experiment, 2016 BLG 1190 LB, is a planet of incredible size. Its mass is more than 13 times greater than Jupiter. This puts the planet on the boundary between 2 groups of celestial bodies, planets and brown dwarfs. It is located in the constellation Sagittarius on the galactic bulge of the Milky Way. Optical Gravitational Lensing Experiment, 2016 in BLG 1190 LB, is the first exoplanet discovered using microlensing. For this, a gravitational lens was needed, a massive object that bends the direction of radiation with its gravitational field, just like a regular lens bends a beam of light. It was discovered by the Spitzer spacecraft, which provided a high-resolution image. The data was mostly obtained from almost continuous ultra-dense survey observations, using the optical gravitational lensing experiment microlensing observations in astrophysics and 3 Korea microlensing telescope, NET, telescopes. The amount of information was greater than for any other planets previously discovered by this mission. However, this is not enough to draw more complete conclusions about the object's orbit. Its existence raises the question of whether such objects can truly be called planets. Or would it be more accurate to call them failed stars, since this object is low mass and formed by gas fragmentation? Kepler-10b. This planet is 560 light-years away from us. It not only has the smallest size among all discovered exoplanets, but it also became the first object that scientists discovered not in our planetary system but beyond it. This was a huge breakthrough in global science. If you look at the image of Kepler-10b, you'll notice the bright red hue of the planet. The color likely results from high iron content due to the planet's large temperature density structure. Usually the temperature in the upper layer of the exoplanet rises up to 1,400 degrees Celsius. Because of this, the object literally melts and kilometer-long streams of molten lava appear. If there were a branch of hell in the universe, it would definitely be Kepler-10b. Back in the last century, humanity knew of only 9 planets in our planetary system. Still, much was left unexplained. But now, the situation has changed. Space probes are moving farther and farther away from Earth and bringing us data about strange and sometimes very creepy cosmic objects. And we still don't have a clear answer to the question of what awaits us next. It just so happens that in our perception, space is something distant, something that doesn't really concern us, and something we don't really need to know much about. Isn't it much more important what's happening on our own planet rather than somewhere on Mars? We're only interested in what laws the government passes there or what the dollar exchange rate is, who won Eurovision, and how much the number of immigrants in the United States has increased. That's our reality, and few people think about how insignificant these questions really are. That's all of us. It's a way to avoid thinking about bigger things that have a direct impact on our planet and therefore on us as well. Maybe it's worth breaking out of our illusory reality and realizing that only in space is the future of all humanity possible, that we are defenseless against a huge number of cosmic bodies that pass by us unhindered, that there are many galaxies in the universe we know nothing about, and that's how civilizations might be born. Maybe someday we'll have to make direct contact with extraterrestrial beings. You never know what you might find in the vast expanses of space. It's finally time to let go of all our fears and pay attention to what's happening in the universe. There could be a planet the size of Mars or Earth beyond Neptune. The space community recently published an interesting article. It says that beyond the orbit of Neptune, there is quite possibly another planet with a size similar to our Earth or Mars. The article also explains that the solar system is formed in such a way that it can use gravity to push such a celestial body beyond its boundaries. Scientists continue to study our planetary system not only to gain a clearer understanding of the origin of celestial objects, but also to learn how they ended up in their current orbits. In this article, the authors emphasize that current models of the solar system's formation do not yet explain these aspects due to a lack of data. Most likely, this missing information includes facts about a planet that orbited the Sun outside the system. There are also giant planets located there, such as Neptune, Jupiter, Uranus, and Saturn. and most likely they are now in the outer part of the solar system or even farther out in interstellar space. Currently, the arrangement of objects in our system looks like this. Inside there are 4 rocky planets, the asteroid belt, and then 4 gas giants in the outer part. Such a configuration seems rather strange to scientists. After Neptune, Jupiter, Uranus, and Saturn, there are dwarf planets and other cosmic bodies like comets. Scientists agree that something is missing here. In their opinion, the development of our planetary system could not have ended like this. That is, with dwarf planets after the 4 giants. If you think logically, it turns out that beyond the aforementioned giant planets, there should be bodies of different sizes, for example, ones similar to Mars or Earth. Therefore, such a planet most likely exists and is located in the outer part of the solar system, between 2 gas giants. If all the hypotheses turn out to be true, then this celestial body is either now in interstellar space far from us, or it has joined the dwarf planets. To settle this question, we need to use more modern telescope models for research, and their development is already in full swing. Currently, the devices do not have enough power to detect a planet at such a great distance. How is the mission of the lunar rover Yutu-2 going? At the end of 2018, the Chang'e 4 station, which also served as a landing platform, began its space mission. And just a month later, the lunar rover Yutu-2 landed on the surface of our planet's satellite. The spacecraft transmitted data to Earth using a special orbital probe, and the lunar rover studied one of the largest craters, Kármán. In total, the Yutu-2 mission lasted 1,000 days. This is the longest period for such vehicles, like this lunar rover. The total distance Yutu-2 covered is more than 800 meters. It studied lunar regolith, residual soil, and the boulders that were there. Although at first scientists thought to send the rover to the moon for only a few months, over a longer period, Yutu-2 was able to gather a lot of important data about the surface. It discovered elements of the lunar mantle, learned about the structure of one of the inner layers, the level of radiation, and even managed to grow Chinese cotton. At the moment, both the rover and the Chang'e 4 station are in so-called deep sleep mode. Soon, they will be able to continue their work. The Perseverance rover has obtained high-resolution images of the dunes. It's no secret that Mars is a very popular planet, not only for researchers, but also for pop culture. Although at first glance there doesn't seem to be anything interesting there for the average person. As movies and books about wars on Mars increase, scientists are working to collect as much data on the planet as possible. There are so many myths and guesses about it. For example, National Aeronautics and Space Administration organized a mission for the Curiosity rover so it could study Gale Crater from the inside and collect data about the structure of Mars's outer layers, and Perseverance to look for signs of ancient forms of life. Such research isn't easy to organize. It requires financial investment and a huge amount of time to plan everything in detail. Be that as it may, the results are worth the effort. For example, at the height of its mission, Perseverance was able to capture images of the Martian terrain. It was confirmed that this celestial body is dusty, cold, and has a lot of sand. Take a look at this photo. Dunes can not only be inhospitable, but also very beautiful. The images taken by the rover are of high quality, which means you can see even the small details in them. What is the size of each object in the photo, and what shapes does the sand take under the influence of wind currents? Previously, our understanding of the Martian landscape was based on assumptions and low-quality images. Click the bell to stay updated and say your little thank you. Give a thumbs up. Cobble will really appreciate it.